In ancient times, Israel faced constant threats from neighboring peoples. The period of the Judges was marked by a cycle of disobedience, oppression, cries for help, and finally, liberation. Jephthah, one of Israel's judges, emerged as a complex figure whose actions were decisive for the fate of his family and nation. The son of Gilead and a prostitute, Jephthah was rejected by his half-brothers and exiled, gathering around him a band of despised men with whom he began to perform feats. With the imminent threat of the Ammonites, the elders of Gilead asked for his help, offering him leadership in exchange for his protection. In this turbulent context, the story of his fatal promise unfolds. At a crucial moment, Jephthah made a promise to God, believing it would guarantee victory, but unknowingly sealed his and his family's fate. "If you deliver the Ammonites into my hands, whatever comes out of the doors of my house to meet me when I return in triumph from the Ammonites will be the Lord's, and I will sacrifice it as a burnt offering." Judges 11:30-31. With these words, Jephthah made a bold and imprudent promise, reflecting his desperate need for victory and his lack of consideration for the possible consequences. In the heat of the moment, driven by the imminent battle and the pressure of leading his people, Jephthah did not think about what or who might be the first to come out of his house to greet him. In ancient culture, making a promise to God was very serious. Promises were irrevocable and had to be fulfilled at any cost. In his genuine faith, Jephthah believed this promise would guarantee divine help in the battle. However, he did not consider that the sacrifice could be someone very close and dear. This promise, made in desperation, would cause one of the most painful personal tragedies in biblical history. It exemplifies how pressure and desperation can lead to hasty decisions with devastating consequences. The drums of war echoed through the valley, and the battlefield became a sea of chaos and destruction. Jephthah led his men with unwavering courage, each sword stroke fueled by the promise made to God. The combat was fierce, with the Ammonites fighting with all their might. The tension in the air was palpable, and every move could mean the difference between life and death. With his experience and leadership, Jephthah guided his men through the enemy lines, each small victory accumulating towards the final triumph. Jephthah's men, inspired by his bravery and determination, fought with the strength of 1,000 men, pushing the Ammonites back step by step. The battlefield was a whirlwind of sounds and images, with the clashing of swords, the cries of combatants, and the smell of sweat and blood. When the last Ammonite fell, the silence of victory enveloped the field, but in Jephthah's heart, unease began to grow. He knew that victory had a cost, a price he would have to pay with something of inestimable value. The battlefield, now silent, contrasted sharply with the whirlwind of emotions within Jephthah as he began to realize the gravity of his promise. The joy of victory was overshadowed by the shadow of the sacrifice he knew he would have to make. As Jephthah and his men returned home, the relief of victory began to transform into a growing fear. He knew that the promise made had to be fulfilled. The gates of his house were approaching, and he prepared to face the destiny he had sealed himself. The return journey was slow, each step heavier than the last. Jephthah could not shake the feeling of despair growing within him. Every detail of the path foreshadowed the tragedy that was to come. His men hailed him as a hero, but Jephthah's heart beat with indescribable anguish inside his chest. He was about to pay the price of victory, which might be too high. As he approached his house, he saw the figure of the person who would come out to greet him. Fear gripped him, his hands trembled, and his heart beat frantically. The celebrations around him became distant noises as he focused on the certainty of his promise. The return, which should have been a moment of triumph and joy, turned into a nightmare, proof that even victory can be accompanied by great loss. The doors of his house were open, and every step he took toward them seemed to bring him closer to the abyss. And then he saw her. As Jephthah crossed the threshold of his house, his heart almost stopped. His only daughter was running to greet him with smiles and laughter of joy. "Father, you're back." Her words were like a dagger to his heart. The words of his promise echoed in his mind, crushing him under the weight of his imprudence. Seeing his daughter with bright eyes and innocent joy was a cruel blow. He who had fought so bravely against visible enemies now faced the hardest battle of his life, fulfilling a promise that would destroy what he loved most. His daughter's joy contrasted terribly with the pain he felt, a pain that cut deeper than any sword. He embraced her, feeling the world's weight on his shoulders, knowing he had to tell the truth, revealing the terrible fate that awaited her. Tears began to roll down his face as he spoke the words he never imagined he would have to say. "My daughter, you have brought me very low. You have become the cause of great trouble to me, for I have made a vow to the Lord that I cannot break." Judges 11:35. The joy on his daughter's face began to fade, replaced by an expression of shock and sadness. As she heard her father's words, she realized the gravity of the situation and the dark fate that awaited her. Her world crumbled at that moment, but the strength of her character began to show surprisingly. "My daughter, you have brought me very low. You have become the cause of great trouble to me, for I have made a vow to the Lord that I cannot break." Judges 11:35. Jephthah cried out in agony, realizing that his military triumph would result in the greatest tragedy of his personal life. His daughter, the light of his eyes, was destined for a terrible sacrifice. The words came out of his mouth with difficulty, each syllable carrying the weight of unbearable guilt. The pain in Jephthah's heart was palpable, a pain that spread like poison, corrupting his soul. He saw himself trapped in a snare he had set himself, unable to find a way out that did not involve losing something so precious. The image of his daughter, so full of life and joy, cruelly contrasted with the fate he had imposed on her with his reckless promise. Jephthah's mind was in turmoil, desperately trying to find a way to save his daughter without breaking his promise to the Lord. But he knew there was no easy way out. Every possible solution seemed to lead to a dead end, a sacrifice he was unprepared to make. The pain and despair consumed every thought as he tried to understand the enormity of what was about to happen. The anguish Jephthah felt was a reflection of his humanity, his flaws, and his deep love for his daughter. He was caught between loyalty to God and love for his daughter, a dilemma few could face without collapsing. Yet he knew he could not turn back. The weight of his vow to the Lord was a burden he had to carry, no matter how painful. Surprisingly, Jephthah's daughter did not flee or scream. Instead, she accepted her fate with a dignity that rivaled the greatest biblical heroes. "My father, you have made a vow to the Lord. Do to me as you have promised, now that the Lord has avenged you of your enemies, the Ammonites." Judges 11:36. Her courage and acceptance were impressive, reflecting a faith and strength that transcended her youth. Jephthah's daughter showed a deep understanding and respect for the seriousness of promises made to God. Her response testified to her faith and loyalty, echoing the same faith that led her father to make the promise. She understood the gravity of the situation, and instead of rebelling against her fate, she embraced it with surprising strength. Her decision to accept the sacrifice voluntarily showed a maturity and courage that few people could match. Jephthah's daughter became a symbol of resignation and strength, her silent acceptance of the divine will reflecting the deep faith that permeated her life and family. Her response was a moment of incredible clarity and purpose, a reflection of the dignity with which she faced her impending fate, with a serenity that defied her youth. She made one last request. "Let me go to the mountains and weep with my friends for 2 months because I will never marry." Judges 11:37. Jephthah granted this request, allowing his daughter to mourn the life she would never have. During those months, she reflected on the unrealized dreams, the experiences she would never have, and the joys she would never know. The time in the mountains was a period of deep introspection and sadness, a moment to process the magnitude of the sacrifice she was about to make. The temporary farewell allowed her and her friends to share tears and laughter, a bittersweet mixture of emotions. The majestic beauty and solitude of the mountains became the fitting backdrop for their lamentations. The nature around her offered silent solace, an eternal presence that contrasted with the brevity of her life. Each day in the mountains was a mix of mourning and acceptance, a process of finding peace amid inevitable tragedy. The young women accompanying her became a chorus of comfort and support, their voices united in a symphony of shared sorrow. The landscape around them, with its raw and untamed beauty, became a fitting setting for the intensity of their emotions. The mountains echoed with their lamentations, a testament to the price paid for a thoughtless promise. Each tear shed was a tribute to the life she would never have, to the dreams she would never realize. The 2 months in the mountains were a time of deep mourning and reflection, an opportunity for her to make peace with her fate and find a measure of peace before the final sacrifice. In the mountains, Jephthah's daughter wept not only for the loss of her life, but also for the future that was stolen from her. The mountains echoed her lamentations, a testament to the price paid for a thoughtless promise. Her tears mingled with the wind for 2 months, a chant of pain and resignation. Each day in the mountains was a mix of mourning and acceptance, a process of finding peace amid inevitable tragedy. The young women accompanying her became a chorus of comfort and support, their voices united in a symphony of shared sorrow. The landscape around them, with its raw and untamed beauty, became a fitting setting for the intensity of their emotions. Each tear shed was a tribute to the life she would never have, to the dreams she would never realize. The 2 months in the mountains were a time of deep mourning and reflection, an opportunity for her to make peace with her fate and find a measure of peace before the final sacrifice. The time in the mountains allowed her to process the enormity of her situation, mourning not only her imminent death, but also the simple joys of life she would never experience. She thought of the moments she would never have, the weddings she would never attend, the children she would never see grow, and the small and great joys of life that were stolen from her. Each tear shed was a tribute to these unrealized dreams, a way of honoring the life she should have had. The natural setting of the mountains, with its vast landscapes and respectful silence, provided a space where she could connect with the divine, finding a sense of peace and resignation. At the end of the 2 months, she returned to her father. The pain in Jephthah's eyes was almost unbearable, but he knew he could not break his promise to the Lord. In a final act of courage, his daughter presented herself for the sacrifice, sealing the promise made by her father, and thus her tragic fate. In the moment of sacrifice, she culminated all the emotions that had built up since the initial promise. Her courage and resignation reflected the dignity with which she faced her fate. The final act was a tribute to her faith and a painful reminder of the power of words and promises. The sacrifice was performed with solemnity and gravity, reflecting the seriousness of Jephthah's vow and his daughter's courage. Her serene acceptance of her fate and unwavering devotion to the Lord became a lasting testimony of faith and sacrifice. This story became a landmark in Israel's history. Every year the young women of Israel went out to lament Jephthah's daughter for 4 days. Judges 11:40. Her story of courage and sacrifice continued to be told, a painful reminder of the consequences of rash promises. The tradition of lamentation was not just an act of remembrance, but also a way to pass on the lessons learned to future generations. Each year, the lament was a rite of passage, a renewal of memory, and a reaffirmation of Jephthah's story's values. Jephthah's daughter became a symbol of faith and sacrifice. Her memory was immortalized in the tears and songs of the young women of Israel. The ritual of lamentation served to remind everyone of the importance of careful consideration before making promises and the need to fulfill vows made to the Lord. The young women who participated in this annual rite learned about the seriousness of promises and the importance of thinking carefully before making irrevocable commitments. Jephthah's daughter's memory was kept alive through these ceremonies, perpetuating the lessons of her story and ensuring that her courage and sacrifice were never forgotten. Jephthah's story and his daughters serve as a powerful reminder of the seriousness of promises. In the heat of the moment, Jephthah made a vow without considering the possible consequences, resulting in immeasurable tragedy. Promises, especially those made to the Lord, should not be taken lightly. The narrative teaches us to think carefully before committing, especially when faith and devotion are at stake. Though made with the best intentions, Jephthah's promise had devastating consequences, highlighting the importance of fully considering the potential impact of our words and actions. It is easy to make hasty promises in moments of desperation or need. Still, Jephthah's story reminds us that we must always consider the long-term ramifications of our actions. Though driven by faith and hope for victory, Jephthah's decisions resulted in an unimaginable sacrifice, a lesson of prudence and wisdom for all of us. This story calls us to reflect on the importance of our words and the seriousness of our commitments. Through it, we learn that faith is crucial but must be balanced with wisdom and discernment. Thoughtless promises can lead to devastating consequences, and we must carefully consider each commitment we make, especially those made in moments of great emotion or desperation. Each decision we make has the potential to impact not only our lives, but also the lives of those around us. Jephthah's story forces us to reflect on our own choices and the impact they can have, teaching us to be more thoughtful and careful in our moments of desperation or need. It is easy to make hasty promises, but Jephthah's story reminds us that we must always consider the long-term ramifications of our actions. Though driven by faith and hope for victory, Jephthah's decisions resulted in an unimaginable sacrifice, a lesson of prudence and wisdom for all of us. Each decision we make has the potential to impact not only our lives, but also the lives of those around us. Jephthah's story forces us to reflect on our own choices and the impact they can have, teaching us to be more thoughtful and careful. Despite the tragedy, Jephthah's story is also a tribute to courage. His daughter demonstrated impressive strength and dignity in facing her fate. This courage amid adversity is a powerful example of facing our challenges with grace and determination. Jephthah's daughter's bravery reminds us to find strength within ourselves, even in difficult circumstances. Her acceptance and serenity in the face of sacrifice inspire us to face our obstacles with courage and dignity, showing that true strength lies in the ability to face the inevitable with our heads held high. Jephthah's story is a tribute to courage. His daughter demonstrated impressive strength and dignity in facing her fate. This courage amid adversity is a powerful example of facing our challenges with grace and determination. Jephthah's daughter's bravery reminds us that we can find strength within ourselves, even in the most difficult circumstances. Her acceptance and serenity in the face of sacrifice inspire us to face our obstacles with courage and dignity, showing that true strength lies in the ability to face the inevitable with our heads held high. Jephthah's faith, though imprudent, is also a central part of this narrative. His belief in the necessity of fulfilling his promise to the Lord, even at such a high cost, reminds us of the importance of our faith and the need to balance it with wisdom. Blind faith can lead to thoughtless decisions, but Jephthah's story also highlights the devotion and reverence for vows made to God. It is a call to balance our faith with discernment and careful consideration, recognizing that our promises have power and consequences. The story challenges us to reflect on how we can keep our faith strong while navigating the complexities of life. The tradition of the young women of Israel lamenting Jephthah's daughter is a testament to the lasting impact of her story. It is a collective reminder of the importance of prudence and the seriousness of promises. This tradition kept the memory of Jephthah's daughter alive, ensuring that her courage was never forgotten. The annual practice of lamentation became a ritual of reflection and learning, a way to honor the sacrifice and faith demonstrated by Jephthah and his daughter. Through the generations, this tradition helped solidify values of respect and consideration for promises, maintaining the crucial lesson about the importance of measuring our words and actions carefully. The tradition of the young women of Israel lamenting Jephthah's daughter is a testament to the lasting impact of her story. It is a collective reminder of the importance of prudence and the seriousness of promises. This tradition kept the memory of Jephthah's daughter alive, ensuring that her courage was never forgotten. The annual practice of lamentation became a ritual of reflection and learning, a way to honor the sacrifice and faith demonstrated by Jephthah and his daughter. Through the generations, this tradition helped solidify values of respect and consideration for promises, maintaining the crucial lesson about the importance of measuring our words and actions carefully. The tradition of the young women of Israel lamenting Jephthah's daughter is a testament to the lasting impact of her story. It is a collective reminder of the importance of prudence and the seriousness of promises. This tradition kept the memory of Jephthah's daughter alive, ensuring that her courage was never forgotten. The annual practice of lamentation became a ritual of reflection and learning, a way to honor the sacrifice and faith demonstrated by Jephthah and his daughter. Through the generations, this tradition helped solidify values of respect and consideration for promises, maintaining the crucial lesson about the importance of measuring our words and actions carefully. The tradition of the young women of Israel lamenting Jephthah's daughter is a testament to the lasting impact of her story. It is a collective reminder of the importance of prudence and the seriousness of promises. This tradition kept the memory of Jephthah's daughter alive, ensuring that her courage was never forgotten. The annual practice of lamentation became a ritual of reflection and learning, a way to honor the sacrifice and faith demonstrated by Jephthah and his daughter. Through the generations, this tradition helped solidify values of respect and consideration for promises, maintaining the crucial lesson about the importance of measuring our words and actions carefully. Jephthah's story and his daughters still resonate today in a world where promises are often broken and words are used thoughtlessly. The lesson of this biblical narrative is more relevant than ever. It calls us to reflect on the seriousness of our commitments and the importance of keeping our word. In our modern society, where quick communication and impulsivity often dominate, Jephthah's story is a powerful reminder of the need to think before speaking and fully consider our promises' consequences. This timeless narrative teaches us to value integrity and responsibility in our words and actions. Even amid tragedy, there is always a spark of hope. Jephthah's story reminds us that despite mistakes and painful consequences, there is always the opportunity to learn and grow. It is a call for redemption and renewal through reflection and repentance. The narrative offers a perspective on finding paths to light and transformation, even in our darkest moments. Jephthah's tragedy is a lesson about the human ability to find meaning and purpose even when confronted with the most devastating consequences. It is a reminder that amid suffering, there is always the possibility of redemption and renewal. The stories we tell and the lessons we learn shape future generations. Jephthah's and his daughter's narrative is vital to Israel's spiritual heritage. This story continues to be told and retold, passing on important lessons to each new generation. Through the generations, Jephthah's story has served as a moral and spiritual guide, helping shape the values and beliefs of people. The enduring influence of this narrative is a testament to the power of stories to convey wisdom and experience, teaching us to be more aware and responsible in our own lives. Ultimately, Jephthah's and his daughter's story is a powerful blend of tragedy and triumph. It challenges us to think before we act, to measure our words carefully, and to face the consequences of our actions with courage and dignity. It is a narrative that reminds us of the complexity of life and the importance of maintaining our faith even in the most difficult circumstances. Above all, it is a call for us always to be aware of the power of our promises and the lives they can touch. Jephthah's story reminds us that amid challenges and difficulties, we can find strength and inspiration to live with integrity, courage, and faith. We have reached the end of our video, and I hope you like it. If you're looking for inspiration, knowledge, and spiritual connection, don't let this opportunity pass you by. Subscribe to our channel now, leave your like and comment to strengthen our community. And if you want to help us continue sharing religious stories that touch hearts, become a channel member. Together we can make a difference and strengthen our spiritual journey. We're counting on you. We've left the link in the description of this video so you can become a member today. Continue watching videos about the history of the Bible. I will leave 2 recommendations here on the screen. God bless you. We will get to the next video.